Hello and welcome to this download from Blackwell Online. My name is George Miller, and my guest today is Australian novelist Peter Carey. In his Illegal Self, Carey's 10th novel, a young woman called Dial, who's just landed her dream job teaching at an elite university, finds herself on the run through a sequence of events linked to her past. With her is 7-year-old Che, who believes Dial is his mother. They'll soon find themselves half a world away from Che's Upper East Side home in a hippie community in rural Queensland. I asked Peter what the starting point for the novel was.
Part of it is an incident in 30 years ago in Australia when I was living in this hippie community where there's this gorgeous, lovely thing where no one ever asks you what you do. And it is very nice. You live somewhere and no one asks you what you do. And they really, because you're just there. Anyway, so this American guy came and he was perfectly pleasant. And he lived there for a while. And then one day there was this huge police raid with helicopters and whatever. We were not used to the helicopters too much. And he was wanted, apparently, for conspiracy to import cocaine into the United States and had come to Australia where he thought he was at the end of the earth. So firstly, I was always interested in that he'd arrived in Bjelke-Petersen's Queensland, and it was really, literally, not melodramatically, a police state. So if you're going to run, it's not really a smart... Anyway, he thought he was in forest, he was off the... And the other thing, there were a lot of comic things that happened as we went around with jars full of 20-cent pieces trying to ring his lawyer in Galveston, Texas, and ask him coded questions because we thought everyone was listening to our conversations from satellites. And I'd always sort of thought I'd like to write. I liked the environment, I liked the place. It seemed there would be something there. But that's not an idea for a book, and I certainly didn't want to write about anything that really happened or that particular character. So I started to think, well, maybe it's a woman and maybe it's a child. And I had to pick, in living in that area in those days, there were always hippie mothers with single mothers on the road, going to a festival or something. And there's these little boys trudging with their hippie mothers, and the little boys were always so fiercely protective of their mothers. And so the new lovers who arrived always had to deal with the little boy, So I thought of them, and at that moment I didn't really know who they were. I didn't know what their relationship was to each other. They had to be American because that was part of what it was. And I had this sort of image in my head of when there's a cyclone coming, everybody flees the area, and there's sort of people at the beaches and things come in. And you have this sort of huge sort of stormy sky. It's really scary. And cars coming only one way with their lights on in the middle of the day. So I just thought it was like that, and then going the other way. And I knew they were going to get picked up by these characters. I didn't really know what role those characters, I didn't know what role Trevor, who becomes very important in the book, was going to play.
But the time, was it sort of the historical moment, was that something that very, very early on was fixed in your mind?
When I began to write it, that image, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
When I began, that's the place I began to write. But until then, of course, I'm thinking about all sorts of things, and I'm reading about the weathermen, and I'm doing this. But we should say the place to start.
The book takes place in 1972. After that sort of first wave of countercultural student resistance, and the sort of living with the fallout of some of that in many ways in the book.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I don't know when I think the Symbionese Liberation Army were still active at that time, and I don't know what time. Yeah, so it was not all over in 72, but I needed to invent a reason why they were on the run.
Yeah.
And this was the reason that I invented, and it was interesting to me because not in Queensland, but in Melbourne during the Vietnam War, I'd been sort of involved in the anti-war movement, not in a sort of an important role, but still on the board of the moratorium. I was a dog's body really, but I was on the board, so it means you sort of know all these different people doing different things. And I had friends who were Maoists and friends who were Trots and friends who were communists, and my Maoist friends would tell me I was going to be shot after the revolution quite cheerfully. And one was in the thing when one really believed there really was going to be a revolution, one really might get shot and get blah blah blah. So I was interested in exploring that time, But of course, then I had to explore it in the United States, where I hadn't lived during that time.
Yeah.